My entire world blew up in a single moment. It wasn't just that my husband of 10 years was cheating on me. It was who he was cheating with, my sister. My younger sister, the one I practically raised. This is the story of how I lost everything and how I had to start the long, painful journey of healing by walking away from my marriage and my entire family. Before my world shattered, it looked perfect from the outside. Most days, it even felt perfect from the inside. My husband, Mark, and I had what everyone called a storybook marriage. We met in college, two idealistic kids who fell in love over late-night study sessions and cheap pizza. We were inseparable. He was my rock, my biggest cheerleader, and my best friend. Together, we built a life from scratch. We bought a small house in the suburbs, planted a garden, and adopted a goofy golden retriever. We hosted holidays, we took road trips, and we talked endlessly about the future, about the kids we'd have, the places we'd see, the life we would grow old in. For 10 years, that was my reality. Mark was thoughtful, or at least I thought he was. He'd leave little notes on the bathroom mirror, bring home my favorite takeout after a long day, and he always told me he loved me before we fell asleep. He was charming, and everyone loved him. My parents adored him, calling him the son they never had. My friends saw him as the perfect husband, and I believed it. I really, truly did. I felt like the luckiest woman in the world. And then there was my sister, Chloe. She's 5 years younger, and from the day she was born, I felt this fierce, protective love for her. Our parents were often busy with work, so I stepped up. I taught her to ride a bike, helped with her homework, and braided her hair for school pictures. When she had her first heartbreak, she cried on my shoulder for hours. When she was struggling to find a job after college, Mark and I let her move in with us for 6 months, rent-free, until she got on her feet. She was more than a sister. She was like a piece of my own heart walking around outside my body. I used to love that Mark and Chloe had a great relationship. He treated her like the little sister he never had. They'd team up to tease me, share inside jokes, and watch sports together when I was busy. I just saw it as a beautiful blend of the two most important relationships in my life. It felt like proof of the strong, loving family we'd all built together. My family, my husband, our perfect little world. Looking back now, the signs were there. Tiny red flags that are so painfully obvious in hindsight. The way they'd sometimes go quiet when I walked into a room. The way he started guarding his phone, angling it away from me. He said it was for work, sensitive client information. And I, the trusting wife, never questioned it. Chloe started visiting less, but she and Mark texted constantly. She told me she was just getting his advice on a guy she was dating. It made sense. She always came to us for advice. Why would I ever suspect it was anything more? My own family helped build this illusion. My parents always preached about keeping the peace, about not rocking the boat. Conflict was to be avoided at all costs. If I ever voiced a small concern, a tiny flicker of insecurity, my mother's response was always, "Oh, don't be so sensitive. You have a wonderful husband. Don't go looking for problems where there aren't any." I realize now that this environment was the perfect place for secrets to grow. I was trained my whole life to doubt my own gut feelings and to put everyone else's comfort before my own. So, I just floated along in my perfect bubble, completely unaware of the storm that was about to break. The day it all came crashing down was a Tuesday. A completely normal day that's now burned into my memory forever. Mark was in the shower, and his phone, usually glued to his hand, was on the nightstand.
It buzzed.
Then it buzzed again. And again. A string of texts, one right after the other. I normally wouldn't have even looked. I respected his privacy, because I thought we had nothing to hide. But something, some primal instinct, made me glance over. The screen was lit up, and I could see the message previews on the lock screen. They were from Chloe. The first one said, "Last night was amazing." My heart just stopped. A second later, the next one appeared. "Can't stop thinking about you." And then the third, the one that destroyed my entire world. "He has no idea, does he?" Poor girl. The air rushed out of my lungs. The room started to spin. I felt a wave of nausea, so intense I had to grip the dresser to keep from falling over. My brain couldn't seem to process it. It was scrambling, trying to find any other explanation. Maybe she texted the wrong number. Maybe it was a twisted joke. But I knew, deep in my bones, in that place that had been trying to warn me for months, I knew. My hands were shaking so badly, I could barely unlock his phone. I guessed his password, our anniversary, of course. The irony hit me like a punch to the gut. I opened their message thread and there it was. Not just weeks of it. Months. A whole secret life right there on the screen. Explicit texts, declarations of love, plans they'd made behind my back. They talked about me. They mocked how trusting I was, how naive. He complained about me to her, and she comforted him. He had told me he was on business trips, they were weekends away together. That ski trip in January? He was with her. The conference in the city last month? Her again. Every single memory from the last year was suddenly a lie. The foundation of my life crumbled to dust in about 90 seconds. I felt this cold, white-hot rage building in my chest, a feeling so powerful and foreign it scared me. I walked into the bathroom. I didn't scream, didn't cry. I was eerily calm. The kind of calm that comes from pure, absolute shock. He was humming, toweling his hair. He looked up and smiled at me. "Hey babe," he said. The casual affection in his voice was like a knife twisting in my gut. I just held up the phone. His smile vanished. The color drained from his face. For a second, he just stared, his eyes wide with panic. The silence was deafening, broken only by the drip of the faucet. "Explain this," I said. My voice was flat, empty. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Just stammering. He looked from the phone to my face like a cornered animal. It's not what you think," he finally managed to say. The pathetic, classic line of every cheater. "Isn't it?" I asked, my voice still unnervingly steady. "Because it looks like you've been sleeping with my sister. It looks like you've both been laughing at me. It looks like my entire marriage is a fraud. Tell me, Mark, what part am I getting wrong?" That's when he crumpled. He started pleading, crying, saying it was a mistake, that it didn't mean anything. The words were just noise. They meant nothing. The man I'd loved for a decade was gone, replaced by this pathetic, sniveling stranger. I left him sobbing on the bathroom floor. I walked into the living room, picked up my phone, and called Chloe. She answered on the second ring, her voice bright and cheerful. "Hey, sis. What's up?" I waited a beat. "I know," I said. The silence on her end was even more damning than Mark's. I heard her sharp intake of breath. What are you talking about?" she stammered, her voice suddenly small. "Don't play dumb with me, Chloe. It won't work anymore. I know about you and Mark." I read the texts. I could feel the rage cracking through the shock. "How could you? How could you do this to me? I practically raised you. I loved you. You were my sister." And then came the final betrayal, the one that cut the last thread of hope I might have had. She didn't apologize. She didn't cry. She got defensive. "It's not my fault," she snapped. "We fell in love. These things happen. Maybe if you had been a better wife, he wouldn't have come to me." That was it. That was the moment my heart didn't just break, it turned to stone. With one sentence, she blamed me for everything. The two people I trusted most in the entire world had not only betrayed me, but had conspired to make me the villain in my own tragedy. I hung up the phone without another word. I walked into our bedroom, pulled a suitcase from the closet, and just started packing. I had no idea where I was going. I just knew I couldn't spend another second in that house. It wasn't a home anymore. It was a crime scene. The first few weeks are a blur. My body was just in survival mode. I crashed on a friend's couch. Thank God for her. She didn't ask too many questions. She just let me be. I barely ate. I barely slept. I felt like I was floating outside my own body, watching a movie of someone else's horrible life. The world outside her apartment just kept going. People went to work, cars drove by, and I couldn't understand how. Didn't they know my world had just ended? The practical stuff, the divorce, was a painful but welcome distraction. I found a lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman who looked at me with a mix of pity and steel. The word divorce felt foreign in my mouth. A few weeks ago, I had a husband. Now I had an opponent. Then the calls from my family started. My parents, after hearing some twisted, self-serving story from Chloe and Mark, called me. Not to offer comfort, but to manage the situation. My mother's first words were, "You need to really think about this. You can't just throw away a 10-year marriage. And think about your sister. This is going to tear the family apart." They wanted me to fix it. They wanted me to go back, talk it out, find a way to forgive. Forgiveness wasn't even on the table. I was still figuring out how to breathe. They said I was being dramatic, making a rash decision. When I told them what Chloe had said, how she blamed me, my mother just sighed. "Well, she's young. She's in love. You know how people can be." They chose her. In the most painful moment of my life, My own parents chose the story that was easier for them. They chose my betrayer. That was the second great heartbreak. I told them that if they couldn't support me, if they couldn't even acknowledge the pain and the sheer ugliness of what was done to me, then I couldn't have them in my life. The call ended with my mother crying, accusing me of destroying the family. I hung up and felt a loneliness so deep and vast it was almost worse than the betrayal itself. I wasn't just losing a husband. I was losing my entire family. This kicked off the next phase of grief, anger. I spent my days obsessing over every detail from the past year, searching for clues I'd missed. It was a form of self-torture. I'd lie awake all night, my mind racing. Why her? Was she prettier? Funnier? Better in bed? I was comparing myself to my own sister, a toxic mental spiral that was eating me alive. The grief was for two people, the loss of my husband and the future I thought we had, and the loss of the sister I once knew. It was a double funeral happening inside my head every single day. My first act of survival was creating my own safety. I blocked Mark's number. I blocked Chloe's number. I blocked my parents' numbers. I got off all social media because I couldn't stand the thought of accidentally seeing a picture of them. I found a small, empty apartment on the other side of town. It was sterile and terrifying, but it was safe. It was mine. Creating those boundaries, both physical and digital, was the first time in months I felt even a tiny flicker of control. Then the real work began. I knew I couldn't do it alone. I found a therapist who specialized in betrayal trauma. In our first session, I just sat there and cried for 50 minutes. She just passed me tissues and said, "The only way out is through." Therapy was brutal. It forced me to face truths I didn't want to see, that my marriage wasn't so perfect, that my family was deeply dysfunctional, and that my own identity was so wrapped up in being a wife and a sister that I barely knew who I was without them. On her suggestion, I started journaling. I wrote letters to Mark and Chloe that I never sent, filling pages with my rage and confusion. It was a way to get the poison out. Healing wasn't a straight line. It came in waves. Some days I'd feel okay, almost hopeful. I'd go for a long walk, cook a nice meal, and think, I can do this. The next day, a song on the radio or a couple holding hands would send me right back into despair. The loneliness was a physical presence, a heavy blanket I couldn't shake off. I had to learn to be alone, to sit in the silence, and not be afraid of it. Slowly, I started to rediscover myself. I signed up for a pottery class, something I'd always wanted to do. The feeling of the clay spinning in my hands was grounding. It was something I could shape from a lump of nothing into something beautiful. I started hiking, losing myself in nature, feeling my own strength as I climbed. Each small step was me reclaiming my life, writing a new story where I was the main character, not just a supporting role. It was a slow, painful journey from being a victim to becoming a survivor. There wasn't one big, movie-like moment where the clouds parted and everything was okay. The turning point was quieter. It was a collection of small moments that shifted something inside of me. I remember one Saturday, maybe a year and a half after I left. I was at a farmer's market by myself. The sun was warm, and the air smelled like basil and coffee. I bought myself a big bouquet of sunflowers, my favorite. As I was walking home with these bright, cheerful flowers, I realized I was genuinely happy. Not sad, but actually peacefully happy. The thought of Mark and Chloe didn't bring that sharp, stabbing pain anymore. It was more like a dull, distant ache, the memory of an old scar. I realized I had gone an entire day, maybe two, without obsessing over them. My life wasn't about their betrayal anymore. It was about my own choices, my own joy. That was the turning point, the quiet realization that I was going to be more than okay. After that, my new beginning started to take shape faster. My confidence, which had been shattered, started to grow back stronger than before. My work improved. Without the constant stress of my home life, I had more energy and focus. I got a promotion and then another. I started building a future that was all mine. I cautiously started letting people in again. I reconnected with old friends who had stood by me and made new ones from my pottery class and hiking group. These were healthy relationships, built on mutual respect, not on obligation or shared dysfunction. I was learning to trust my gut again, an instinct I had been taught to ignore for so long. And what about Mark and Chloe? I never went looking for news, but it found me eventually. A mutual friend told me their grand, passionate love affair had imploded in less than a year. Apparently, the guilt, the judgment, and the toxicity of a relationship born from betrayal was too much to handle. You can't build a life on ruined foundations. I heard Mark became bitter and isolated, and Chloe moved to another state to escape her reputation. Hearing this didn't bring me joy or a sense of revenge. It just felt sad. Inevitable. It was the natural consequence of their choices. They broke everything around them to be together, and in the end, they just broke each other. My new beginning was never about them.
It was about me.
It's about waking up in my own apartment, a space filled with my art, my books, and my peace. It's about looking in the mirror and seeing a woman who is strong, resilient, and most importantly, free. I didn't just survive the worst betrayal imaginable. I used it as fuel to build a life that is so much more authentic and joyful than the one I lost. The journey from that Tuesday morning to today was the hardest thing I have ever done. There were times I honestly thought the pain would kill me, that the loneliness would be permanent. But what I learned is that we are all so much stronger than we think. They thought they broke me. My ex-husband, my sister, my family. They thought their betrayal would be the end of my story. But they were wrong. They didn't break me. They broke the chains of a life that was holding me back, a life built on a beautiful, fragile lie. Walking away from my marriage and cutting off my toxic family wasn't about destruction. It was the ultimate act of self-preservation. It was me, finally, choosing myself. This story isn't about revenge. It's about resilience. It's about the incredible power of walking through fire and coming out the other side, not unmarked, but forged into something new, something stronger. The scars are there, and they always will be, but now they're just a reminder of what I survived, not what I lost. If you are going through something like this, if your world has been shattered by the people you trusted most, please know this. Your pain is valid. Your anger is justified. And your healing is possible. It will take time, it will take courage, and it will take a fierce commitment to yourself. But you can rebuild. You can find joy again. You can create a life that is so much more beautiful than the one that was taken from you. You don't just have to survive. You can thrive. Thank you for listening to my story. I know it's a heavy one, and I share it hoping it can help someone else feel a little less alone. If you've been through a similar experience, I invite you to share your story in the comments. Reading each other's journeys can be an incredible source of strength and community. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like and consider subscribing for more stories about healing and rebuilding. And please, be kind to yourself today. You deserve it.